Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for clicking on this video. If you're new here, my name is Brenda and I make faith-based content. I post new videos every Monday, so if that is something you're interested in, make sure to check out some of my other videos and subscribe to my channel. By the way, please excuse my voice. I have a little bit of a cold and probably TMI, but whatever. I'm getting my wisdom teeth out tomorrow, and I was like, I want to record this video before that happens because I don't know how the healing process is gonna go, and like it'll give me something to do while I am healing, editing this video. So if you can't see it from the title already, we are going to be talking about the fact that you were not made for this world. I am making this video for believers, non-believers, everyone under the sound of my voice. This is a message that we all need to hear and recognize for every season of life that we're in. You were not made for this world. This is not the way that it was intended for it to be. Ever since the beginning of time, we can look at the word and we could see in the beginning what God had intended the world to be. He created man and woman in his image, and he created the Garden of Eden that they could walk among his presence and that they would have eternal life, that they would not know sin or suffering. And as we all know the story, there was the fall of Adam and Eve, and they had disobeyed God. When God said that if they did, they would bring sin into the world, that they would know what death is. He said, if you eat of this fruit, you will surely die. And so that is what happened. Adam and Eve were living in the light. They were living how God intended it to be. And after they had disobeyed God, they passed to death. So everyone after them is born a sinner. But since literally the beginning of time, God had already started chasing us down to restore this Eden to us. He chose Abraham, he sent Moses to get the laws, and then when the laws were not able to be upheld, he brought his son, because that was the only way that we would be able to have redemption and truly be made right with God again. And it's literally talked about since the day that the fall happened, when God said, to the snake that was deceiving them, he says, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head and you shall bruise his heel. So when he says he shall bruise your head and you shall bruise his heel, he's talking about Jesus. He is stating that there is going to be an offspring that comes from the woman. And he was already talking about Jesus literally the day that it happened. Like, that is just really crazy to think about. So God already had this plan since day one. He was like, nope, we got a redemption plan happening. I just wanted to give that overview for context because I believe that it is important for us to just be refreshed of that, whether we are a believer or not a believer. That is something that we should be able to at least grasp or understand before we get into this topic. Basically, what that is saying is that in all seriousness, if we have not put our faith in Jesus, we are spiritually dead. We do not have eternal life in us. We do not have our eyes open to the truth. We do not have that communion with God. We are spiritually dead. We are cut off from communion with God. And we are still descendants of Adam, and we are under the curse. So I want to read from Ephesians 2, and this is going to be in chapter 1. And you were dead in the trespasses and sins in which you once walked, following the course of this world, following the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that is now at work in the sons of disobedience. And when he says the prince of the power of the air, he's talking about Satan. And if you are a believer now, you know that you look back and you're like, oh wow, I was like in total bondage. Like the enemy really, he had a hold of me. He blinded my eyes to not know the truth. And I also want to add that if you just look around at your job, at your school, in your home, we don't have to think about if people are not happy or if they're suffering or if we live in a perfect world. We don't. Ever since the fall of Adam, we have lived in this broken world. Nothing goes correctly. Nothing usually goes as we planned. We have sickness, we have disease, we have traffic, we have debt. Like every bad thing that we can think of, like, is because of sin. And that's why we always hear people complain. Everyone is always complaining. I feel like everywhere I go, people are just like, oh, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. Like everyone is always just in like a groaning type of state. They're just not satisfied. They're not pleased. And then we see people who become successful and famous and they get all the money that they could get and they spend it all on the most pleasurable things. They spend it on material things and houses and cars, partying and having a bunch of partners, and that is what the world thinks will satisfy. We're like, okay, if I can get enough money to just get a beautiful house wherever I want, a beautiful car, I can get people in my life, whoever I want in my life, they are still not satisfied. And a lot of the times they end up the least satisfied in the world, and they are honestly the ones that end up losing their life early because they chased it all thinking that they would find satisfaction and they didn't. And when they figured that out, when they found that out, they were like, okay, well, there's nothing else. Sadly, a lot of them end up suicidal, and that is just a pattern that we have seen all throughout our generations. Why do I say that? I say that because I want to talk about a very important verse in Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes is written by a man named Solomon. Solomon is David's son. So God asked Solomon to pray whatever he wanted, and Solomon asked God for wisdom. He asked for an abundance of wisdom. That's what he wanted. So God blessed that request, and he gave Solomon so much wisdom, like more wisdom than anyone on the earth at that time. Like he just gave him so much wisdom. So Solomon was a very wealthy man. And the whole book of Ecclesiastes is honestly a little bit depressing because he talks about like, what is the point of everything? And I've had this and I've had that and nothing else satisfies me. But it's also a very wise book to read because it teaches us a lot of life lessons and, you know, just some hard slaps of reality that we often need. But there's a specific verse that I want to read. So Solomon says in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 11, "He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity into man's heart, yet so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end." So he is saying God has put eternity in our hearts. That's why we feel like there's always something missing, because we weren't made to live in this world like this. We were made for an eternal life. And that is how God originally designed us. But because of the fall of man, because of the curse that was brought upon the world, we are seeking and desiring to get that satisfaction. And that itch that we're trying to scratch is the eternity that God has placed in our hearts. So I want to read from Romans chapter 8. This is starting at verse 18. And it says, "For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. And not only the creation, but we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies." So this is just a beautiful example of how the whole earth is just groaning for righteousness, for how it is supposed to be. And us believers, it says, we that have the Spirit, we have the first fruits, so we have a glimpse of what it's supposed to be like. We have felt God's presence. We have seen him in creation. We have had our eyes open to understand, wow, this is reality. This is not all that there is. I have something amazing to hope for. I have a world without sin and suffering, a world of joy and glory, and a world where I get to be in God's presence with a new glorified body that can handle all of the glory that is to be there. Another thing that I want to say about this was that believers, we do not belong to this world. Something that God had always made just really stick out to me was the fact that we are literally called foreigners and exiles here on this earth. So 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 11 says, "Beloved, I urge you as sojourners and exiles to abstain from the passions of the flesh, which wage war against your soul." And then verse 12 says, "Keep your conduct among the Gentiles honorable, so that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day of visitation." So when he's talking about the Gentiles, he's talking about the non-believers. We're supposed to be living in this world. When God saved us, he could have just taken us up to heaven, but he wanted us to stay here because he wants us to stay in this world as lights, as examples of God's grace, of his salvation, to spread the good news, to be the salt of the earth like Jesus has called us to be. So he's saying to live honorable among the people that you are to be shining your light. And when it says on the day of visitation, it's talking about on the day of judgment, when they see that, oh wow, this was actually true. God gets all the glory. And then I also wanted to read from 1 Peter chapter 1 verse 17, and it says, "And if you call on him as Father, who judges impartially according to each one's deeds, conduct yourselves with fear throughout the time of your exile." So this is literally a time of our exile. So God calls us to be in the world. He kept us here for a reason after we were saved, but he does not call us to be of this world. He does not want us to get sucked into the traps of this world and the desires of the flesh and the temptations that Satan has brought upon this world. And Jesus even said in his word, if they hate you, remember they hated me first. So don't expect to be liked. Don't expect for your opinions to be applauded. Expect to get persecution. And the Bible even says to rejoice in it. Jesus says, rejoice when you are persecuted, for great is your reward in heaven. This is in the Gospel of Matthew. This is chapter 6, verse 24. And it says, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. That is what the world is chasing, is money, security. So God is saying in his word that we cannot serve those two things. We are to be fully devoted to God, putting our trust, our life in his hands, trusting that he is the all-sufficient provider, and that when we live in such a way, our light is going to shine before others. And Jesus tells us to let our light shine. We are supposed to be living in a way where the non-believers around us are like, what do they have? Why are they different? Like, why are they not worried? Why are they joyful? Like, what are they so hopeful about? What are we? But we have this hope in our heart. We have this treasure in our hearts. And that is why through sufferings and persecutions and through hard times, we have this weird sense of hope and joy in our hearts, because we're like, this is temporary. This is not the end. I know what is to come, and like, I know the truth because Jesus has set me free. Jesus said, you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. So we have this just sense of peace in us among the sufferings of this world. And that is how we are supposed to live our lives and be a testimony to others. And so I'm saying this specifically to believers as well right now, is to remember that you are a foreigner on this earth. You are not made to live like the rest of the world. You are made to stand out. You are made to be a light. In Matthew 5, verse 15, Jesus says, no one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. And then I want to read the Message translation. It says, here's another way to put it. You're here to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I've put you there on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven. So not only are we to stand out and be the lights of this world and to live differently, because we were not meant for this world, we were not made for this world. We are made for the new heavens and the new earth and for the future to come. So not only are we to live that way because of the response of praise and worship that we get from this amazing gift of grace that God has given us, also, when we live that way, we're going to lead others to Christ by the testimony of our lives. And that is why, and that is another reason why God has called us to be the lights of this world. We're here for a reason and for a purpose. So that is it for today's video. I hope that this was able to shed some light and understanding for both ends. If you are a believer, if you are not a believer, I encourage you to just look more into the scriptures, look at them yourself. So thank you guys for watching this video. If you did enjoy, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you made it this far, thank you for bearing with my nasally voice. Alright, well, I love you guys, and I hope that you have an amazing and blessed and beautiful day.